We have some breaking news in bowling. We have had a couple more discontinued bowling balls get announced for December 2024. This is a much smaller list than last month. Last month we had about 13. This month we only have 2, but they're 2 very, very impactful ones. So stick with us. We're going to go through what the balls are, what it truly means, and then what balls can you replace them with if you have them and want something different, or if you never had them but you want a similar reaction. All right, let's get it going. So, the balls that we are talking about today are the Absolute Power and the 900 Global Sublime. Both balls just were discontinued this month. So what that means for everyone who always asks, what does it mean when it's discontinued? It means the bowling ball is not being poured anymore at the factories. So Storm and 900 Global are not producing this ball anymore. There is still a ton of quantity. There is a ton of supply out in the world at places like Bowlers Mart, Bowler X. You have all of the bowling ball distributors. You have things like Classic Pro Shop. You have a lot of those, but these balls are not being made, so the quantity out in the world right now is limited. Once they are all gone from online, they are gone forever. And I see these balls bumping up in price when you're trying to buy them over the next couple of weeks and months because they were both really sought after bowling balls. So we're going to start with the one on the left. We have the Storm Absolute Power. This was a very weak cover, very strong core ball. This was an evolution off of the Storm Absolute, which was very hit or miss for a lot of people. But the Absolute Power then came out. It was a solid version. It had that R2S deep cover stock, which we haven't seen all that much, and it absolutely excelled, no pun intended, on this Rotogrip XL. This ball was fantastic for a lot of people. It was a great benchmark for a lot of people too, especially people who are a little more speed dominant. This was a great league shot, versatile benchmark piece. So it's very disappointing to see that one go. It did come out earlier in 2024, around January. So it has seen its time. It made it about a year, which is a good amount of time for a bowling ball. They usually only last 8 to 12 months before they get pulled off the shelves. That's when sales, you notice, start to decline. And then when sales decline, the ball gets pulled and they try putting something different up. So that's the Absolute Power, the story behind that. We'll talk about some replacements in just a second. Going over to the 900 Global Sublime. The Sublime, in my opinion, was one of the best league shot balls of 2024. This ball was great early in the year for being able to just be good on a house shot. It was phenomenal at that. It is a stronger cover hybrid bowling ball with a slightly stronger Sublime core. The core is fairly similar to the Phase 2 and the Optimum Idol and bowling balls like that. Just a middle of the road, slightly stronger symmetrical core to it. And then it had that hybrid cover stock that was more 2 parts pearl, 1 part solid. So it acted more like a pearl, but it went a little more forward off the end of the pattern than a lot of the other balls kind of in that zone. This was, in my opinion, a really good mix between a medium smooth and a medium sharp ball. So if your Phase 2s or your Optimum Idols or even your now Sublime Focuses started to burn up a little too early, the Sublime was a good ball to go to if the Optimum Idol Pearl or the Phase AI or other shiny balls would just hook way too late and be a little too squirrely down lane. So this was a good transition ball in my opinion. I'm very disappointed to see it go. Sales must not have been great, which is disappointing. I thought this ball was very, very good though. So it is sad to see it go. But we'll talk about some replacements in a second because both of these shapes are going to be a little bit tough to replace because they're so unique. They are very unique shapes in general. So let's talk about what the replacements look like. Going over to the Absolute Power to kick us off, we have 2 replacements that I think are going to be the closest we get. Unfortunately, I don't think they're that close. The Absolute Power, like I mentioned, is unique, a weak cover, very strong core. So the first comparison we have is the Summit Ascent, which was, again, it had that R2S solid cover stock, which is similar to the R2S Deep. So it had that weak cover, but then it had that Summit core. So it was a strong symmetrical core instead of asymmetrical core. Now, unfortunately, the Absolute Core made a very different shape than the Summit Core. So that's a little bit unfortunate. The Summit Ascent is much weaker than the Absolute Power, in my opinion. The Absolute Power is about in line with a Phase 2, maybe a little sharper than a Phase 2. The Summit Ascent is weaker than a Phase 2, so I don't see these balls being absurdly close unless you drill the Summit Ascent a little bit stronger or you like the absolute power when it was drilled a little bit weaker. Then you can make them fairly close, but if you wanted something weaker than what you have for an absolute power, that sum of descent could work. Now, the other option I think is going to be a little closer, and that is a brand new Attention Star S2. This, in my opinion, is what is supposed to replace the absolute power to a certain degree, because this S2, while it has that weak-ish asymmetrical core in it of the Attention Star, the cover stock is also fairly weak. It is weaker than you would expect. This is a hybrid bowling ball in dull, but it's not going to be the strongest ball in the bag by any means. So, like, we have that Physics Blackout coming out very soon. The Physics Blackout is going to be much stronger than this S2. The S2 just gets further down lane and is even a little bit smoother down lane. I feel like that'll be the closest we get to an absolute power. It's going to be a little better on league shots. That S2 is already shown to be great on league conditions, where similar to that absolute power. Now the cover is a little bit stronger on that Attention Star S2, and the core is a little bit weaker, but I think it's going to be the best we're going to find. This absolute power was just such a unique ball that I don't think there's a true one-to-one comparison for it. So if you think you're going to miss your absolute power and you don't want another absolute power before they all sell out, or you have one and you're going to run with it until it is absolutely gone on you, and you need something new, these are two options that you could use. Now, let's do the same thing, jumping over to the Sublime. On the Sublime slot, we have two balls that I think are going to be fairly close, but again, the Sublime was unique. It was a very unique ball because it isn't a true pearl like we have the Optimum Idol Pearl or the Attention Star. It's a hybrid, so it's kind of in between and it's a little stronger. So the first ball we have on the list, Optimum Idol Pearl. I know I mentioned the differences between these two, but I think if you take a little bit of the surface off of the Optimum Idol Pearl, it gets close to what the Sublime wanted to do. And then the cores are fairly similar. In my opinion, the Sublime core is a little more dynamic, so it wants to be a little sharper when it sees friction compared to the Idol core, which wants to be smoother when it sees friction. So if you drill this a little bit stronger, maybe a little lower val angle to make it hook quicker off friction, I think you can make an Optimum Idol Pearl be close to a Sublime. Now, the other option is a little tough too, but we have the Attention Star. The Attention Star is an asymmetrical pearl compared to a symmetrical hybrid with the Sublime, but I think the cover stocks are fairly close and the cores are fairly close in strength. The Attention Star wants to go when it sees friction, and the Sublime didn't really want to do that per se, but it did hook a bit more than something like an Optimum Idol Pearl. So I think really these two balls are the over and the under on where the Sublime fits. So I think the Attention Star is a little bit on the over. The Optimum Idol Pearl is a little bit on the under for what the Sublime did when it hooked and how much it hooked. So if you need a different bowling ball for this, I would recommend one of these two. One other option is to polish your Sublime Focus, and you honestly get pretty close. Because remember, the Sublime Focus is just the solid version of the Sublime, same exact cover stock, just solid. So if you want that shape, you could easily polish your Sublime Focus, get it closer to what this thing did. But otherwise, that is all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching. If you are going to miss any of these two bowling balls, let me know down below in the comments, because I personally am going to miss both of these. I never have thrown either. I do have an absolute power that I'm drilling out soon, but I never threw a Sublime, but I've seen a lot of high sets with the Sublime, a lot of high scores, and I know a lot of people that adored that absolute power. So it'll be interesting to see what people use over top those bowling balls, and I'll keep my ears peeled to see if I hear what others to end up replacing them with. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to drop a subscription if you want more bowling news like this. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all later.